Okay, so I've been asked to talk about how retrofitting homes helps tenants and how it also helps combat climate change. It is my absolutely favourite subject um, because existing social housing is so valuable that we have absolutely no choice but to protect it. It can't be replaced. There aren't sufficient funds. If it's demolished, almost all the tenants that live in it will be displaced and very little of it will be put back. At the same time, there are huge environmental costs to demolishing social housing, as well as losing communities and losing homes. The big thing about existing homes is that they contain lots of energy. That seems odd, but every brick that goes into a house, every bit of concrete, every bit of steel, every pane of glass requires a lot of heat in order to be produced. So a building is like filled with energy that you've put into it. If you demolish it, all of that energy, literally all of that energy is lost. And if you have to replace it, then you have to start all over again. So it's not only very expensive cash-wise, it's very, very expensive for the environment. The other side of that coin is that virtually all existing homes can be upgraded. I spent, well, a lot of years actually. I was paid by the government for 10 years to work out how you could rescue the most difficult estates. This was way before climate change was a crisis. And so I went around the country working on very, very difficult estates. And literally without exception, unless there was zero demand, unless there literally weren't any people there to move in, then any estate, I would argue, can actually be rescued and made more attractive and made more energy efficient and actually repaired. The big lesson from all of that, I talked to housing finance directors in every local authority, I think, that had difficult estates, is that it's far cheaper and quicker than knocking down and rebuilding. So when councils argue that actually they're going to save money by knocking down houses, please believe me, it's never true. It's true in their eyes because they're not actually counting the real cost. They're not counting the cost of demolition. They're not counting the cost of infrastructure. They're not counting the environmental costs. They're not counting actually the full cost of trying to replace social housing. The other thing is that when you retrofit an estate, you can take in outstanding repairs and you can also take in fire safety needs. So you actually get a win-win-win. You make the house more energy efficient, which saves on the climate, but you also make it in much better condition and you take care of the fire safety requirements, which you have to do anyway. Maybe the most important thing about it is that it holds communities together. So when you say, when Cameron, for example, says that you've got an estate that's plagued with gangs and drugs and crime, and you actually look very, very closely, you might find that there are half a dozen families at the very, very most in an estate that are causing a lot of trouble and that need very special help. But the vast majority of tenants are just trying to live their normal lives. And what's lacking on that estate is proper management and proper supervision and good caretaking and good repairs. So the way to think about your home is to think of it like a teapot. When you're trying to keep the tea warm in a teapot, you put a tea cozy on the teapot. If you think of your house in the same way, you need a tea cozy around your house to keep it warm. So it's called a whole house retrofit. You basically try and wrap up your whole house. You wrap up your walls, windows, doors, roof, floor. You literally put it into a packet, a tea cozy, called Fabric First, that will make your house warm. You'll then find, miraculously, that your energy bills can be halved. If you then improve your heating system, they can actually even be more than halved. Now, it is true that retrofit while you stay in the house is difficult. Builders are difficult. Builders are messy. There's noise, there's dirt, there's delays, and sometimes there are mistakes. So what you need, what your landlord needs, and this is where the tenant's jury can have a really big impact, what the tenants need, what the landlord needs, is to have an on-site manager. And I'm going to tell you a couple of examples which prove this. Your on-site manager will actually oversee everything. We'll make sure that tenants know about appointments. We'll haul the builders in if the builders let tenants down. You also need a building supervisor to make sure that the contractor does what it's supposed to do. You need a tenant liaison person dedicated to actually taking up all the tenants' issues. And most importantly, the architect that designs the retrofit must be kept on during the work. Very often landlords and councils get the architect to do the design and then get rid of the architect because it saves them money. But that is the most terrible way to waste money, because if the architect isn't there to see his work actually done properly, who's going to know all those technical details? So you must have all those things in place. And then although the building work will still be difficult, it'll actually be manageable, which is very, very important. So we've talked to tenants in several really important retrofit projects about their experience before it happens, during it, and after. So before it happens, tenants are told what I've just told you, that it will make their homes much warmer, that it'll make their estate much more attractive, that it'll take up the repairs, that overall it will make their community stronger and better, and it will save on their bills. So tenants on the whole, when things are explained properly, back retrofit. During the works, it's difficult. There's no way of escaping the fact that it's difficult. After the works, tenants are extremely proud of what it does to their estate. It looks better, it feels better, they feel that somebody cares, the landlord takes more pride in it, they take more pride in it. So I'm just going to quickly give you two examples. One is the Edward Woods estate in Hammersmith, which is adjacent to the Lancaster West estate where Grenfell Tower is, and Edward Woods has 3 tower blocks, 23 stories high, just like the Grenfell Tower, and a very big retrofit project was done on the Edward Woods estate. It's almost entirely council tenants, very little right to buy, and the tenants were very enthusiastic about the proposals. When the works happened, scaffolding was put up to 23 stories, so there was a lot of noise and clattering and wind, and then sheets were put over the scaffolding, so the flats all became quite dark. There was a lot of drilling, and unfortunately they found a lot more problems with the concrete building structure than they thought there were, so a lot of repairs were required. But it was, and it took twice as long. It was supposed to take 18 months, it took 3 years. But the tenants actually were amazingly long-suffering, partly because there were concierges at the bottom of every block that were able to deal with all their problems, and partly because they had an on-site manager for the builder and an on-site manager for the landlord. One of the remarkable things they did was they put solar panels right down the front of each of the tower blocks, south-facing, so they got a lot of solar energy, which fueled all the electric lighting for all the stairwells and the lifts, and it saved tenants a lot on their energy bills. So
2-minute warning.
Oh my God, that was a very successful project. Wilmcote House is the second project, which is in Portsmouth, also 3 towers, but 15 stories. That was structurally problematic. The council wanted to demolish it, the tenants didn't want to. And so they worked out that actually it would be cheaper, even spending £100,000 per flat to retrofit it than to knock it down, which they did. It was a very difficult project, but guess what? Tenants saved £700 a year on their energy bills, and they got bigger flats because the balconies were incorporated. So tenants got an amazing amount out of those retrofits. Landlords got an amazing amount. And the thing that we have to remember is that housing lasts not 20 years, not 30 years, but hundreds of years if we care for it. After all, Rome has lasted for 2,000 years with bricks and cement. So we can do it if the Romans can do it. And we have to remember it'll help tenants and it'll help the environment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thanks very much, and really delighted to be here this evening. Hope you're all well. So I'll be speaking briefly about the kind of co-benefits of climate action. So how action on climate change, particularly related to improving housing, can help to benefit us in multiple ways with various different aspects of our life. So I work in a climate change institute, and it's fair to say it's quite a significant challenge that we face to try and tackle climate change. And for me, there's 2 key questions that we need to have in our minds as we think about what needs to happen to tackle climate change in order to kind of engage with everyone across our country. And those 2 key questions are here. So what gets people out of bed in the morning? So what is the kind of positive vision of our future that we all want to see? And secondly, what keeps people awake at night? So what are some of the other challenges that we're facing in our day-to-day lives, and how might action on climate change be able to help to address some of those other challenges? So this slide gives some illustrations of some of the other things that we may well be thinking about or concerned on a day-to-day basis. So our health and the health of our friends and family, and the NHS more widely, the economy, how well that's performing, and related to that, jobs. And then on the bottom left, the education of our children, and the houses where we live, and the properties where we live. And then, of course, other issues which we're seeing now are issues such as climate change. And I guess a key question for me is how, and sometimes we can talk about these as being separate issues, but what I hope to kind of communicate through this presentation is the kind of interrelationship between many of these issues, and to show how action on climate change can help to achieve really important benefits for our health and the NHS, for our economy, for job creation, for education, and for our children, and also for improving the quality of the housing that we live in. And I'll give an example here. So we have a situation in the UK at the moment where if you're living in poverty, you're disproportionately likely to live in a house that has relatively low energy efficiency, so more likely to have poor insulation or to leak heat. And I guess the situation of living in poverty and then living in a home that's physically hard to heat means that people are more likely to be unable to adequately heat their home, and they're more likely to face, a choice between eating, putting food on the table, and actually heating their homes. And that has a knock-on impact in terms of our health as a society. And so those who are living in cold homes are more likely to have physical or mental illness as a result of living in a poorly insulated home, which increases costs to our health service. And for the children who are living in those properties, they're more likely to miss days of school through being made ill, for example, through respiratory related illnesses like more incidents of colds, for example. For the parents, they're more likely to miss days of work, whether that's getting ill themselves or having to stay home to look after their children. And this all impacts upon the economy in terms of the productivity of our workforce, the fact that some of us go to work ill because of the quality of our homes, and the fact that it's not as efficient as it could be, which also impacts upon the kind of costs for the NHS. And at the moment, there's this kind of what you could call a vicious circle, where because, for example, people miss days of work because they're being made ill by their home, so that then becomes more of a challenge to actually pay those bills in the first place. But it doesn't have to be that way, and action on climate change can really help to address some of this kind of vicious cycle. So I'll just give an example here of the role that energy efficiency can play. So by improving the energy efficiency of our homes, we can help to address some of this relationship between poverty and housing, so that everyone can live in a home that they can afford to heat. So we can reduce the risk of physical and mental illness, reduce costs for our health service. Our kids are more likely to miss fewer days of school, and also that's good for their education and attainment. We're likely to miss fewer days of work due to illness. That helps to improve the productivity of our workforce. It helps to create jobs. It helps to reduce expenditure for our health service as well. So you can see there the kind of way in which an action that's good for climate change can also help so many other aspects of our day-to-day lives and the things that we're worried and concerned about, and help to break some of this kind of vicious cycle. And I'll give a quick example. So there's a really nice project run by Gen2 Housing Association. So the kind of housing, social housing people working closely with the kind of NHS team at Sunderland Clinical Commissioning Group. And there they run a project where people who were referred to the NHS through particularly things like respiratory related illnesses, with their permission, their details were kind of passed on, and they were supported to improve the energy efficiency of their home by getting things like new boilers or new energy efficiency measures. And they measured the impact that had, and they found that people who'd had these improvements in their energy efficiency, there was a 60% reduction in GP appointments and a 30% reduction in admissions to accident and emergency, because people were living healthier lives as a result of the improvement in their home. And it helped to reduce the proportion of homes that were living in fuel poverty, where people were struggling to pay their bills, by 37%. So we can kind of think back to those things at the start. This was a really nice project that helped the NHS and helped improve housing quality. And another example from New Zealand of this kind of a program, where they went into an estate and they improved the energy efficiency of the houses there, and they tracked the impact that had upon children living in those houses, and found that the following winter there was 21% fewer days of absence from school from the kids who were living there, again because their respiratory health was better because of their improvements in the quality of their house. So again,
can I just, sorry to interrupt you, we just had a red card up.
Oh, sorry.
Just wondered if you wanted to say, Phil?
Yes, I mean, sorry, I didn't want to sound disrespectful, Neil. Now, the previous slide, or maybe the one before that, you categorised poverty, and then you done this big graph around poverty. I mean, really, we're talking about climate change, and I mean, you give all these like different bits and pieces around poverty. I mean, really, I just didn't get that, because we're here to talk about, yes, energy efficiency and stuff, but you're categorising being in poverty is, I mean, I just didn't really understand. Was there a need why we'd have to categorise poverty and people on low incomes rather than just people in general? Or
Sure, sorry, Phil. Yeah, I should have explained that better. So I guess the purpose of this was just trying to illustrate the relationship that the stuff that's good for tackling climate change can be good for helping to improve people, to help to pull them out of poverty, for example, to help to improve health outcomes. So I should have explained that better. So sorry about that.
Thank you, Neil.
So I'll just go through to the other example. So again, thinking in terms of the other benefits that action on climate change can have, in terms of some of the other challenges that we're facing as a society. There's over 19 million homes across the UK that will need to be retrofitted if we are to meet our climate change goals. So as well as a significant challenge, that also poses a significant opportunity in terms of creating jobs across our country and helping to upskill people across the UK. As well as providing benefits for helping householders to save money on their bills, as Anne kind of outlined in her presentation as well.
2 minutes.
Thanks. And just to finish off, so the stuff I've spoken about there is focused largely on what we call mitigation, so reducing the impact of climate change by improving housing quality. There's also the adaptation side of things as well, so how we are better prepared for a warmer climate with more extreme weather events, so extreme heat, for example, and things like flooding. I'll focus very briefly on extreme heat. So a couple of years ago, 2018, sorry, we had our warmest ever summer. At the current rate of change, that summer will occur roughly once in every 4 years by 2035, and every other year by 2060. And the summer that we had back in 2018, you may remember, was quite disruptive, and it was quite a challenge sometimes to actually keep cool in our homes, as well as being disruptive for things like our transport system. So in terms of our homes as well, as we go about taking actions to retrofit them, it's really important that we think about how we are making those changes in a way that allows us to be better adapted to a warmer climate as well. And so I guess one of the good news stories, I suppose, is around these new technologies which are coming in, particularly heat pumps. They do provide opportunities for providing cooling in the summer months, as well as providing warmth in the winter months as well. So it's kind of win-wins, the potential there. So I'll finish off, and just to kind of quickly summarize, that hopefully I've tried to outline the opportunities that action on climate change can have for improving housing, to help everyone have homes they can afford to heat, to allow us to have healthier lives, to create jobs across the country, to help to reduce poverty and inequality, to help kids to miss fewer days of work, fewer days of school, and parents to miss fewer days of work, and also to help us to be better adapted to a warmer climate as well. Thanks very much.
So, hi there. Thanks for having me along. I work in the government, in the Department for Business, and I just wanted to talk to you about, so the department where I work, it has 4 things that are the kind of top priorities. One of those 4 is that we were trying to aim towards our net zero target for 2050. So I think you've been having some sessions up till now, but essentially the UK government was the first government amongst the major economies to sign up in law to reaching net zero by 2050. Apologies if you've already gone over these grounds, but it's important for us to kind of mention these things. Within that, there's lots of different streams of work of things that we do in government to try and go towards these targets. And I'm here today to talk about social housing in particular, which is about homes, but there are other parts of the department that focus on businesses, helping them achieve net zero, public sector, helping the schools and hospitals reach net zero, and other areas. But I don't want to go into them too much because I've been trying to amend my presentation as I've gone along today to listen into some of the comments of people been making. So
just a quick question, Chris, for you, just for the benefit of the jury, when we talk about net zero, what exactly do we mean by net zero?
So thanks for that. By net zero, so zero carbon would be you don't burn fossil fuels, for example, you don't contribute more CO2 into the atmosphere. And net zero is just a way of saying we might emit a bit of CO2 into the atmosphere, but we'll balance that out by removing some of it by taking some of the carbon out of the atmosphere to make overall no emissions into the atmosphere. Is that okay?
Thank you.
So the government cares a lot about this area. It's one of the top priorities. So there was originally a report which led into a manifesto commitment just before the last election, which committed to having £3.8 billion spent supporting social housing retrofit. And that's the area that I'm working in now. Essentially, it's grants to improve homes. And the two main things we get out of this is helping us towards that net zero journey and reducing energy bills for people. There are 24 million homes in the UK, 4 million of them are social housing, and of those 4 million, about half of them are ones that would benefit from having retrofit. So what we've done is we started up last year with some projects to look at 19 different areas in the UK to upgrade their homes and to help look at new different ways of installing retrofit technology in their houses. And then next week we're about to launch the next phase of this, which is £160 million for expanding the amount of retrofit work that we do to social housing in the UK. So what is it? So the funding, it's £3.8 billion from government to be spent over 10 years, which is quite a lot of money. That will cover about half of the homes that need to be retrofitted, along with some money from the social housing landlords. There's no money requested from social housing tenants as part of this. The local authorities access this money. They get this money by bidding for funding for groups of homes. So they might bid for 100 homes or 1,000 homes, and they get allocated money to do certain things to them. So the things we like, the things we're looking at are a lot of insulation that could be to the roof, walls, floor, some low carbon heating. So it could be changing the heating from a fossil fuel, like a gas burning heating, or a wood fire burning, or an oil heating, to something that's low carbon, or other measures like new windows. The amount of money that's available per home differs depending on how much work is needed. The homes that need the most retrofitting can get up to £24,000 of support, and the ones that are quite near to the right energy efficiency levels, they can get up to £15,000 in total of support from government and the landlords together combined. Yeah, what this eventually leads to is the projects take about a year from start to finish to do one of those big projects that might involve 100 homes. At the end of it, you see the bills go down as the homes become better insulated. In some of the homes where the heating might have changed, it will significantly improve CO2, so there'll be less carbon going into the atmosphere from those homes, and also wider benefits, hopefully, in each area. The purpose is we look at each home and try to make plans that fit the neighbourhood and that work with the tenants in the area, so that the end result is something that improves the comfort of the people living there, and hopefully looks good too. So just to kind of wrap up the three things for looking ahead. We started off small with a pilot last year. Next week, that's growing, it's doubling in size, and we're growing even more in future years, so that we can expand to reach those a good chunk of those 1.6 million houses. It only works if it's a partnership. So what we want to see in each case is government and social housing landlords and residents working together, so that the projects are done in partnership.
2 minutes.
And also learning. I'm finishing up in about 20 seconds, so I'll give you a little bit of time back, but also in learning. Some of this is new, it's new technologies, and it's new this new things being tried all the time in this green economy, and we're hoping that by sharing our experiences that we can improve on this. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Matt Copeland. I work at National Energy Action. We're the national fuel poverty charity. Today I'm going to share some thoughts about what the impact of retrofit might be on households, what might happen to the cost of energy going forwards, and what needs to be done to retrofit to reach net zero. So firstly, what do we need to do to decarbonise our homes? So I think it's worth thinking about what a national level first. The aim in England is for all properties to reach a reasonable standard of energy efficiency by 2035, and for the poorest households, so fuel poor households, to reach that standard by 2030. So it's prioritisation of low-income households. That's 60% of homes across the nation that need to be upgraded in order to meet that target. It's worth bearing in mind that just doing that doesn't get us all the way to net zero, but it is consistent with what experts say we need to do to get there by our 2050 target. So I've had to consider two really key questions. And I'd like to focus, so firstly, what the impact is on consumers, on households, and secondly, if we are to take steps to decarbonise our homes, what will be the impact on energy bills? So I think it's already been said already, but I'd like to go over a few of the benefits that other people have talked about. And I think the benefits for decarbonising homes can be significant, especially if we decarbonise them through firstly trying to reduce the amount of energy we need to use, for example, by installing insulation. So that tea cozy idea that Anne talked about earlier. If we do that, then the cost of heating a home can be reduced dramatically. In England, the least efficient homes often pay thousands of pounds more for their energy a year than the most efficient ones, sorry. So it can be as big a gap of £2,000 per year. That's a huge amount of money. Reducing the cost of that home heating results in one of two things. or a combination. So your energy bills can reduce and therefore have more money to spend elsewhere or to save. Or the cost of heating reduces, so you can afford to keep your home warmer than it would have been in the past. The benefit of having more money to spend elsewhere should be relatively clear to all of us, but it can have a really big impact on the local economy. £1 saved on energy is quite likely to have to be spent on the local economy, and this can lead to, for example, more local jobs. Being warmer at home has significant benefits as well. It means that you're less likely to contract medical conditions, and also makes less deadly. For example, respiratory conditions can be much less harmful when living in a warmer home. And there's some evidence this is true, for example, for COVID, as well as more typical illnesses such as the flu and longer term conditions like COPD. So all in all, making our homes more efficient should result in a much better experience and better outcomes for the householder. As Anne did say, making those changes can cause disruption in the home, but the benefits at the end of it for the vast majority of people massively outweigh the cost of doing the work, the disruption that is experienced. The second thing that decarbonize your home is to change the type of heating you use. And many households at the moment use gas boilers, and gas boilers burns fossil fuels and that emits carbon. So you could move your gas a unit basis. So it could result in a slightly higher unit cost for heating.
I think everybody says the same. I've lost this totally earlier on.
Oh no!
Total wipeout.
I'll guess at where I'll need to come back in, but the summary of what I've said so far is that taking steps to decarbonise our homes through putting a tea cozy on, like Anne said, means that you'll probably be warmer and you'll probably pay less for your energy, which means better health outcomes and you have more money in your pocket to spend in the local economy. The other thing you can do to decarbonise your home is to change the way you heat your home. So for example, lots of us use gas boilers to heat our home at the moment, but burning gas does release carbon. So you could move your gas heating to electrical heating, but electricity does cost more per unit than gas. But if the right technology is installed well, alongside energy efficiency measures, the overall bill will likely still be reduced, and you can stay warmer at a lower cost still. It's worth saying that different forms of heating have different attributes, which may mean the way we heat our homes might have to change. As an example, a gas boiler is on demand, meaning that when you feel cold, you're likely to turn your gas boiler on and you'll soon feel the heat through the radiators. With a heat pump, for example, it is more difficult to do that, and it's actually more efficient to preset a temperature you would like to have at your home beforehand, and the heat pump will keep you at your desired level of comfort, but it cannot provide that sharp boost in the same way. Taking all this into consideration, it's really important that tenants' needs are considered whenever there's a retrofit done, especially with regards to the heating type. So making those changes to decarbonise homes can have a significant impact on how much that energy pays for the energy every year, and in order to keep warm and well at home. However, energy prices do change all the time, and it's worth considering what direction that might take. You may have seen in the news recently that the price cap, which is a cap on the amount energy suppliers can charge you per unit of energy, will increase at the energy costs by about £150 per year for the average household. That'll happen in autumn. That's largely due to a sustained increase in gas, often move up and down, and that affects your energy bill. The price of gas is very, very difficult to predict. But at some point, lots of people are speculating about whether there could be a tax on gas, as burning it does release carbon dioxide. That could mean that the cost of gas increases more in the future, but currently that is just speculation.
2 minutes.
Electricity prices are currently closely linked to gas prices because we burn a lot of gas to make the electricity we use. As renewables become more prominent and gas power stations are used less often, electricity prices will become less dependent on gas prices. And there could be fewer increases and decreases in electricity prices. But the price might still have to increase as the cost of transitioning to net zero has in the past often been placed on energy bills, and this could continue into the future. However, all of this is speculation, and much of it will depend on government decisions that are yet to be taken. The government's own projections have scenarios where the price of both electricity and gas both increase and decrease, taking into account inflation. I want to cover one last thing, and I've been told you've asked the question, will my rents go up to pay for the retrofit? That's quite a difficult question to firmly answer. Thoughts? I think it largely depends on how the retrofit is paid for. You've just heard about some of the funding options for retrofitting homes, and it's likely that landlords will be able to access in order to make their homes more efficient. Whether or not the landlord can access funding to cover the whole costs is uncertain, and it is up to the landlord how to cover those costs if the funding from the government does fall short, but they could do so by increasing rent. And if the whole cost of the upgrade has to be covered by the landlord, then I would expect there to be more risk that rents go up. But if the whole cost of the upgrade was covered by government loans, then I would not expect rent to increase as a result. That's all from me today. Thank you for listening to me and everyone else. And I'm really looking forward to your questions and the groups that are just coming up.